Noah stepped behind her and rested his hands gently on her shoulders, his voice steady but softer than it had ever been, telling her that survival was something she had done, not something she was. And Ara stood there staring at her reflection in the dark window, realizing that for years she had only known how to exist in reaction to fear. How to measure each breath against potential consequences, how to calculate her movements around someone else's control, and now that Rowan was gone. Arrested not just by the law but by the exposure of his own unraveling arrogance, the silence felt unfamiliar rather than comforting, because when you have lived inside tension long enough, calm can feel like standing on open ground without armor, and in the weeks that followed there were no dramatic confrontations, no secret recordings, no strategic meetings with Ivy. Only therapy appointments where Ara's voice trembled as she described the accident in full without the distortion Rowan had forced upon it. Only evenings where Noah listened more than he spoke, resisting the urge to fix what could only be healed slowly, and Sundays became strange territory, mornings when Ara would wake early out of habit, her body expecting obligation, her heart bracing for a message that never came, and Noah would rise too, quietly making coffee, opening curtains, allowing light to fill spaces that had once held dread. Never pushing joy onto her but offering steadiness instead, and freedom revealed itself not as relief but as reconstruction, as the careful unlearning of hypervigilance, as the steady replacement of secrecy with choice. And when the first article surfaced reopening the case and identifying Rowan as the architect of coercion and manipulation, when whispers began to circulate but failed to carry the venom he had promised, Ara read it once and exhaled. Not because it erased what happened, but because it proved that truth did not twist as easily as he claimed. And the envelope that had once lived hidden behind spare towels resurfaced one final time in her hands, the old lease that symbolized a chapter she believed she could never escape. And she fed it through a shredder without ceremony, the paper disappearing into thin strips that felt less like destruction and more like release, and Noah watched not as a rescuer but as a witness. Understanding now that stepping inside the bungalow that day had not been about catching betrayal, but about stepping into the wound she had been forced to carry alone. And as months passed, the tension in her shoulders softened, her laughter changed not into something louder but into something unguarded. And when they drove out of the city one Sunday with no destination, just a road unfolding ahead of them, Ara rested her head against the window and realized she was not counting exits. Not calculating threats, not preparing explanations, she was simply present, and she thanked Noah not for saving her but for refusing to let fear write the ending of their marriage. And he told her he had never stepped into the past to fight it, only forward toward her, and the quiet that followed was no longer hollow but shared, not the silence of secrets but of safety. And though healing would continue in ways neither dramatic nor linear, though memories would still surface and nights would sometimes carry echoes, the power dynamic had shifted irrevocably because Rowan's leverage had depended on shame and isolation, and both had been dismantled by exposure and partnership. And in the steady rhythm of ordinary days, grocery lists, work emails, small arguments about nothing, laughter over burnt toast, the extraordinary weight of what they survived began to settle into something less sharp, less defining, and Sunday, once the axis of fear, became just another day shaped by their own decisions, and that was the quiet triumph, not revenge, not spectacle, but the reclamation of choice. The understanding that betrayal had not destroyed them, because it had not truly been betrayal in its simplest form, but manipulation weaponized through silence, and once the silence broke, once truth spoke plainly and without rehearsal, control evaporated, leaving behind two people who had almost been undone by a past that refused to stay buried but who chose, again and again, to face it in the open rather than live in its shadow, and in that choice was something stronger than survival, something steadier than vengeance, something earned through confrontation and patience alike, and as the road stretched forward beneath an open sky, neither of them braced for impact. Because for the first time since their marriage began, nothing was waiting to explode. Nothing was hidden behind a closed door, and the future, uncertain but unthreatened, belonged fully to them.